ESPN Speed World providing exclusive coverage of today's championship final. This is the Valvoline Championship for Bosch Volkswagen Super Vees from St. Petersburg, Florida. Hello everyone, I'm Larry Newber. You're looking at the front row, but the real story is the second and third qualifiers. Third on the grid and second in the championship is Mark Smith. He has had simply an incredible season. Mark Smith has won 5 times. You can see them there on road courses as well as ovals in 1989. His 155 points are good enough for second place. He is just 4 behind this man, Robbie Graf. Now, Robbie has won 3 times. Still, Mark trails him because Mark did not finish in the most recent race on the oval at Nazareth. Well, let's look at the grid. Chris Smith from California, no relation to Mark, has the pole, and Graf will start second. Mark Smith is third. Beside him is the veteran Stuart Crow, who is still looking for his first career victory in Super Vees. Mike Smith, that's Mark's brother and teammate, starts 6th, and John Brooks, the Tucson native, starts in 5th position. The grid begins to roll under its own power. We see Michael McHugh and Ron Dykes. Row 6 is Charles Neerberg and Jerry Glenn, his first ever Super V race. Row 8 is shared by Griffith Chassis, and Row 9 is all Ralt. Row 10 features the hometown favorite, Lee Perkinson. 20 cars will take the green flag today, but the championship will be decided and all eyes will be on 2 drivers only. This Speed World presentation is brought to you by Volkswagen of America, and we'll be back with the start. Welcome back to St. Petersburg and the final round of this year's Valvoline Championship for the Bosch Volkswagen Super Vees from St. Petersburg, Florida. Chris Smith, the car on your left, that's the driver's right as they go into this final right-hander before the start-finish line, brings the field around as the fast qualifier. On the outside is Robbie Graf, one of the 2 drivers going after the points championship today, and we have a green flag as the drivers enter the first dangerously high-speed corner number 1. It's a series of turns, actually. As they round that corner successfully, they go down a very short straightaway. It's about 1/4 of a mile in length to a hard right-hander. And the man who has jumped to the early lead is Mark Smith. Mark Smith has launched from his 3rd starting position, gone past both the second and fastest qualifiers, and he is the early leader here. And Robbie Graf, who started the race in 2nd, has slipped behind the pole setter, Chris Smith. So Graf runs 3rd in the race. He sees Mark Smith disappearing ahead of him, and that's something that Graf simply cannot deal with here at St. Petersburg today. He has to finish ahead of Mark Smith to win this championship, so every turn is like a white flag, a final lap for Robbie Graf. He is the man in desperate straits right now in that red and blue car running in 3rd position. Coming down to complete lap number 1, there is the leader, Mark Smith, followed by Chris Smith, Robbie Graf, and Stuart Crow is running in 4th position. A battle is shaping up for 5th position. In the bright orange car, that is John Brooks, and in the green and white car is Mark Smith, our leader's brother, Mike Smith, as they are trying to gain ground. Now, we are going to go inside of Chris Schneider's car for 1 lap around this 2.5-mile temporary street circuit here at St. Petersburg. There it is on your left. You are riding with Schneider. Now, this is the pit straight that you're going around right now. You can see it's actually almost a series of corners. There is a very high-speed first turn, very dangerous part of this track, that short 1/4-mile straightaway. Now, it will lead on to a couple of 90-degrees. You turn to the right 90 degrees, then back to the left. Then this leads into a long sweeper that in turn turns into the 2nd longest straightaway on this course. Now, obviously, the Super V drivers move up to the highest gear they have, 5th gear. This straightaway is interrupted by one of 2 chicanes designed to slow the cars down for safety reasons on this street course. There you can see it, tire line with very tall curbs, and the curbs here are very high, the drivers tell me, as street circuits go. We are at the north end of the racetrack. You turn to the right, you go east, turn to the right again. Now you're going back south. You're actually driving along a mirror image of that straightaway you were just on a couple of seconds ago. The Tampa Bay is off on your left, lined by cement. This is the fastest part of the racetrack. The Super Vees will reach speeds in excess of 140 miles per hour along here. Now, watch for this straightaway to be interrupted by another chicane, another speed slowing safety chicane. Al Lang Field there is off on your right. We are approaching turns 8 and 9. They are gentle, but they are high speed. They lead on to the main straightaway. It comes right after this harsh right-hander. You'll see the start-finish line, the flagman off on your left, and that is 1 lap around the St. Petersburg 2.5 miles. That bright orange number 2 is John Brooks. He's been able to hold off Mike Smith for 5th. There is that battle for fifth, and here comes Ron Dykes in that maroon car. This is a battle for position, and Dykes surprises Mike Smith, goes to the inside around turn number 2, and Ron Dykes has suddenly moved past Mike Smith, and now he runs in 6th position. Now, this is somewhat of a surprise because Smith was doing all he could do to work on John Brooks, and while he was occupied doing that, Dykes sneaks by. There is the leader, Mark Smith, as he goes by one of those 8,000-pound cement barriers that completely line the inside and the outside of any temporary course in America. And boy, I'll tell you, when you hit one of those, you know that the car has come to a stop suddenly. Smith leads. That is Mark Smith. Chris Smith, the pole setter, still holding on the second, and Robbie Groff is desperately trying to get by. Leaders come through the chicane, coming along the Tampa Bay as they head for the final turns of the 2.5 miles around the St. Petersburg road course. There's Mark Smith one more time. Mark is a college student, as is his brother, Mike Smith, as Lee Perkinson has come to a stop. Perkinson is a man who has a lot of experience in single-seater open-wheel cars. He is the hometown favorite here, but his day has ended prematurely. There is that Mike Smith, John Brooks battle, and Mike Smith has gotten around Brooks. So while we were watching Perkinson, who had stopped out on course, Mike Smith has moved up a position. Now, Mike started the race in 6th spot, and he very much liked to get up there and help out his younger brother in that quest for the championship that Mark Smith is turning in today. But Mike is a long ways back, and there's Brooks, who is now chasing Mike Smith, and was just the opposite way around just a couple of laps ago. I mentioned that Mark Smith is a college student at the University of Oregon, and Mike Smith right there is a college student at the University of Washington right now. And Mike is perhaps a little more the adventuresome of the two, although both of them are pretty brave young men at the ages of 22 and 23 years of age. The man you're looking at right there, Mike, is 1 year older. He has his pilot's license and is cleared to fly helicopters. So that gives you a little idea of the depth of this man's life. An active race driver and very much active in the family business, as well as sporting activities, including flying a helicopter. Super Vees, of course, is a division that has turned out more drivers directly to American IndyCar racing than any other series in the past 10 years. Drivers like Michael Andretti, Al Unser Jr., Jeff Brabham, Arie Luyendyk have moved directly on to the IndyCar ranks after having last competed in Super Vees. Meanwhile, we're back up front checking on the progress of our leaders. There is Mark Smith, and we have a spin. That was Chris Smith. Our pole setter, Chris Smith, who was trying to hold back Robbie Groff, has spun. We'll go back and check on the progress. There he is. Chris has made contact with the right side wall. We're, I believe, about at turn number 6 or turn number 7. Chris is trying to get righted. He drops the car back down in the first gear. He's pulling away, but he is shoving his front end assembly. As you can see, there is the front nose cone, what's left of it, and the wings as he goes around turn number 1. Normally you take that at about 120 miles per hour, but Chris significantly slower this time around. Smoke as the front end assembly rubs against the right front wheel. It doesn't turn when he goes into turn number 2, but fortunately he still has brakes. And so the Dave Conti car, they came here with great expectations, a surprise in the front row. Conti has had great success in recent years, but today is not going to be a winning day for the Dave Conti team. After 10 laps, Mark Smith in his quest for the championship leads here at St. Petersburg. This is Larry Nuber back at St. Petersburg, Florida for the final race of the 1989 SCCA Valvoline Championship for Bosch Volkswagen Super Vee. You're looking at that bright orange car of John Brooks, the Tucson, Arizona native. He's having a pretty good race. He's running in the top 5. His best finish this year so far has been a 3rd, and that was on the oval. Now, there is the leader, Mark Smith, beginning to work his way through slower traffic. There is Ron Ciarvella from Sarasota. This is only his 2nd Super V race ever, and he goes a lap down in the early going here to Mark Smith. And look at Robbie Groff. Now, Robbie lost some ground to Mark Smith a couple of laps ago, but driving like a madman, I'm sure, but that's a controlled madman. Robbie Groff has begun to move back up on Mark Smith. Once again, Groff, even though he leads in points, must finish ahead of Mark Smith, particularly if the two of them are finishing in 1st and 2nd in this race. 4 points separate 1st place from 2nd place, and only 4 points separate the two of them in the season's championship drive. Now, Robbie Groff hopes that he does not relive what happened to his older brother Mike Groff just 4 years ago at this very racetrack. Mike was going after the championship, and he lost it here on the streets of St. Petersburg, and Robbie hopes that this is not a replay of 4 years ago. Through the first of two chicanes, you'll see Mark Smith make a very hard right-hander here. Once again, we are at the north end of the racetrack. A nice, close, tight shot of the two leaders coming around. This little switchback is what it amounts to as they go from running north on the racetrack to south. And Mark Smith right now is really got the better of Robbie Groff. Smith is driving an excellent race. And it's at this point that it's really the mental part for Mark Smith that becomes more important than the physical part. He has shown the ability to be a very quick race driver. And at this point, he has to concentrate on the task at hand and be most aware of what's going on in front of him. Have that tunnel vision the drivers talk about. Look down the road, a quarter mile, half a mile, as far as you can on a road course, as far as the road course will allow you. And not necessarily ignore Robbie Groff, but certainly not give him more attention. Now there is Stuart Crow in that blue and white number 3. Stuart Crow is a Texan that many people thought would be one of the front runners consistently in the series this year. He has been, but he has yet to win a race. And just about everyone assumed that Crow would pick up a checkered flag following a Super Vee race before 1989 was over. But it doesn't look like it today will happen again. And if so, he'll be shut out for this season. Stuart Crow, he too has vast experience in open-wheel cars running on road courses. He's come out of the state of Texas and found a home in the Super Vees here in 1989. See how Smith responds to this challenge. Mark Smith driving with not reckless, but certainly close to reckless abandon, trying to discourage Robbie Groff. They come past the pit straight, cross the start-finish line, and look at the turn that Mark Smith is pulling off in. And look at the distance he has put between himself and Robbie Groff. Just a tremendous lap for Mark Smith. He has really responded to the challenge. Lap traffic closed the distance down to practically nothing between the two lead cars, and Mark Smith turns in just a near perfect lap, and suddenly there are 4 or 5 car lengths once again separating him from the second running Robbie Groff. We are now about one halfway through this Super Vee contest, and the championship is going to be decided in the minds of those two drivers on your screen right there. And we've had a crash. That is Ron Dykes, the Californian. He was the 8th fastest qualifier here at St. Petersburg, and he had high hopes of improving on his personal best finish of 1989, which is also an 8th, but Dykes has crashed. That's coming right out of the second chicane, down not too far from the pit straightaway. Dykes struggling to get out of the car. He appears to be okay. The leaders go by without incident, but Dykes is not in a particularly safe place. Let's see how SCCA chooses to handle this. Here comes Mark Smith, followed once again closely by Robbie Groff, as incidents on the racetrack and lap traffic has closed up that interval, and now there are slower cars directly ahead. Let's see if they move over and give our leader Mark Smith enough room. They come out of turn number 1. Smith darts to the inside and looks like he's going to have enough room. Heavy traffic. It's 2 and almost 3 abreast, but Mark Smith gets through, and Robbie Groff gets closed off. Robbie Groff loses, my goodness, about a half a second to Mark Smith. You can see Smith enjoying now a little more interval than he has had for the last 2 or 3 laps, and now the onus shifts back. That old word, momentum, must transfer back to Robbie Groff, as the dynamics inside the minds of these drivers is simply fascinating. The cars are reasonably evenly matched, as Jerry Glenn, who is starting in his first Super Vee race ever, is the man that Groff has just gone around. Now Groff is slowed and he's waving. Apparently he is anticipating a yellow flag. There it is, the yellow flag. We are assuming that is for the Dykes incident, as we have a full course yellow. There is Mark Smith going past the wrecked car of Ron Dykes. There comes Groff, who has let Jerry Glenn back around. As we look at the lap traffic, the number 72 car of Charles Neerberg, that's lap traffic, but there is a top 5 runner from the 1989 season. As this race goes to full course yellow, we'll be back and try and straighten all this out. One thing we know for sure, Mark Smith, in his quest for the championship, is doing what he has to do, and that is lead this race at St. Petersburg. With the field under a full course yellow, welcome back to the Valvoline Championship for Bosch. Volkswagen Super Vees from St. Petersburg, Florida. Mark Smith is the race leader, and once again, as we go inside of Chris Schneider's Super Vee, Mark Smith and Robbie Groff are shooting it out here on the streets of St. Petersburg for the season-long championship. And obviously, Mr. Schneider is anticipating a green flag this time. The starter leans over his perch on the outside of the front stretch, flickers the green flag, and Mark Smith and Robbie Groff go back to shooting it out again. Boy, and look at Robbie Groff. Tell me Robbie Groff is not on the accelerator as he comes around turn number 1, and he drills the back end of Mark Smith. Our two leaders have crashed here just 3 laps from the finish. There is Robbie Groff. He appears to be stopped. Mark Smith's car did back up. Let's see if he is gone. Mark Smith is, yes, he is gone. He is back out onto the course, and we have a brand new race leader. It is Stuart Crow. Now we're going to go back and look at that incident when Robbie Groff rear-ended our race leader Mark Smith and see if we can figure out exactly what happened. And we have another crash in the chicane. See the smoke in the upper part of your screen. There are 2, maybe 3 cars involved in this. You can see the number 0 of Michael McHugh from Belmont, California, a Super Vee regular. And now moving out of the mess is Thomas Van Camp. And McHugh is in a very precarious position, blocking that first of 2 chicanes, and you can see that Van Camp's car is not at full song. Meanwhile, here comes Crow around. I kind of anticipate having yet another full course yellow flag. And here is a replay on what happened when Robbie Groff came down that quarter-mile straightaway and ran into the back of race leader Mark Smith. Now, in a situation like that, there is a possibility that the brakes had not warmed up on Robbie Groff. The 2 of them have really been going after it for the points championship this year, back to the accident at the chicane. You hope that in a situation like that, there was mechanical failure involved. Once again, call it for yourself. There's Groff tail-ending Mark Smith. You just hope that it was mechanical, and if it was not, if it was intentional or driver error, you always assume that's something that simply does not happen at this level of professional motor racing. Well, it's likely that this race will end under yellow flag, and if so, Stuart Crow is going to be the winner. And look who's being shown in 3rd place, Mark Smith. If he comes home there, he's the champion of the Super Vees for 1989. Streets of St. Petersburg, Florida for the final Super Vee race of the season, and Stuart Crow, who has been a model of consistency this year since the opening race at Phoenix. He has finished no worse than 7th. A 3rd place, which he has scored twice, has been his best finish. And he looks like he is en route to win here for the first time in his career. That is Mike Smith, the brother of Mark Smith. You'll see a green and white number 7 right there. He is being shown in 3rd position. If he finishes there, Mark Smith will be the champion. Crow is moving up right on the exhaust pipes of the pace car. And Stuart Crow, he wants to win here, but I know that he feels somewhat embarrassed about winning under yellow flag. But Stuart, buddy, you deserved it. Racing is a matter of skill, and many times it's also a matter of luck and timing. And Stuart Crow is in the right place in the right time here at St. Petersburg today. You can see that Stuart would like to race across the start-finish line at full song, but the pace car, of course, is holding him back. But Stuart, buddy, you are going to be the 1989 champion of the St. Petersburg Grand Prix for Super Vees. Stuart Crow will also finish this season in 3rd place in points, and Mark Smith, who won 5 of the 10 races now on the 1989 schedule, will be the champion for 1989. Mark Smith, 22-year-old, very aggressive driver from McMinnville, Oregon, as the checkered flag comes up, and Stuart Crow is crowned the winner here at St. Petersburg. And the Ralt chassis wins again. It's a chassis that is virtually unbeatable. You can see that Stuart Crow is releasing some of his frustrations as he goes all out to take his victory lap, the winner here at St. Petersburg. Mike Smith comes home 2nd. Mark Smith, the 1989 champion, is 3rd. Charles Neerberg ends a very successful season by getting yet another 4th place finish. And as winner Stuart Crow gets a hug from his wife, let's go down and talk to Mark Smith, the new champion for Super Vees, about that last lap incident.
Either Robbie lost his brakes or I don't know what happened, but anyway, it turned out good. I mean, my rear wing came off, and I also had my suspension kind of ajar, so it feels great. I've been working a long time for this.
Robbie Groff's crew is examining his car. It's still a mystery what happened. Robbie, by the way, was examined and treated with a broken elbow. Meanwhile, here's Stuart Crow, the winner, talking about his 1990 plan.
We're looking a lot forward to racing Super Vee next year.
I was rather succinct. Here are the final point standings. Mark Smith, the champion, followed by Robbie Groff. Stuart Crow comes home third. Harold Heisman, the driver from Norway, is fourth. And Mike Smith, the brother of our champion, comes home in fifth position after the 1989 season. Well, take a good look at all the young drivers on the podium, 22 and 23 years of age. These are drivers who could well be sitting in the starting lineup at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in just a couple of years if history repeats itself. They are enjoying the spoils of victory here in St. Petersburg. Today's ESPN Speed World has been brought to you by Volkswagen of America. This is Larry Newber saying so long, everyone, from St. Petersburg, Florida, and congratulations to Mark Smith, the champion of Super.